Hello, everybody. This is Charlene Burke with Grow Because You Know. That's www.growbecauseyouknow.com. Thank you for joining us in Morning Mindset Cafe, where we're reading Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich a few pages at a time. In those few pages are always nuggets to provide us with great fodder for discussion. Today we're reading pages 249 to 251. That's my copy, my version of the book. And it actually includes the beginning of the self-analysis questionnaire. But before then, we're going to read just a little bit to set us up for it. Let's get started, shall we? The Devil's Workshop, the seventh basic evil. In addition to the six basic fears, there is another evil by which people suffer. It constitutes a rich soil in which the seeds of failure grow abundantly. It is so subtle that its presence often is not detected. This affliction cannot properly be classed as a fear. It is more deeply seated and more often fatal than all of the six fears. For want of a better name, let us call this evil susceptibility to negative influences. Men who accumulate great riches always protect themselves against this evil. The poverty-stricken never do. Those who succeed in any calling must prepare their minds to resist the evil. If you are reading this philosophy for the purpose of accumulating riches, you should examine yourself very carefully to determine whether you are susceptible to negative influences. If you neglect this self-analysis, you will forfeit your right to attain the object of your desires. Make the analysis searching. After you read the questions prepared for the self-analysis, hold yourself to a strict accounting in your answers. Go at the task as carefully as you would search for any other enemy you knew to be awaiting you in ambush, and deal with your own faults as you would with a more tangible enemy. You can easily protect yourself against highway robbers because the law provides organized cooperation for your benefit. But the seventh basic evil is more difficult to master because it strikes when you're not aware of its presence, when you are asleep, and while you are awake. Moreover, its weapon is intangible because it consists of merely a state of mind. This evil is also dangerous because it strikes in as many different forms as there are human experiences. Sometimes it enters the mind through the well-meant words of one's own relatives. At other times, it bores from within through one's own mental attitude. Always, it is as deadly as poison, even though it may not kill as quickly. How to protect yourself against negative influences? To protect against negative influences, whether of your own making or the result of the activities of negative people around you, recognize that you have willpower. Put it into constant use until it builds a wall of immunity against negative influences in your own mind. Recognize the fact that you and every other human being are by nature lazy, indifferent, and susceptible to all suggestions which harmonize with your weaknesses. Recognize that you are, by nature, susceptible to all the six basic fears and set up habits for the purpose of counteracting all these fears. Recognize that negative influences often work on you through your subconscious mind. Therefore, they are difficult to detect. And keep your mind closed against all people who depress or discourage you in any way. Clean out your medicine chest, throw away all pill bottles, and stop pandering to colds, aches, pains, and imaginary illness. Deliberately seek the company of people who influence you to think and act for yourself. Do not expect troubles, as they have a tendency not to disappoint. Without doubt, the most common weakness of all human beings is the habit of leaving their minds open to the negative influence of other people. This weakness is all the more damaging because most people do not recognize they are cursed by it. Many who acknowledge it neglect or refuse to correct the evil until it becomes an uncontrollable part of their daily habits. To aid those who wish to see themselves as they really are, the following list of questions has been prepared. Read the questions, state your answers aloud so you can hear your own voice. This will make it easier for you to be truthful with yourself. Self-analysis test questions. Do you complain often of feeling bad? And if so, what is the cause? Do you find fault with other people at the slightest provocation? Do you frequently make mistakes in your work? And if so, why? Are you sarcastic and offensive in your conversation? Do you deliberately avoid the association of anyone? And if so, why? Do you suffer frequently with indigestion? If so, what is the cause? Does life seem futile and the future hopeless to you? If so, why? Do you like your occupation? If not, why? Do you often feel self-pity? And if so, why? Are you envious of those who excel you? To which do you devote most time? Thinking of success or of failure? Are you gaining or losing self-confidence as you grow older? Do you learn something of value from all mistakes? Are you permitting some relative or acquaintance to worry you? If so, why? Are you sometimes in the clouds and other times in the depths of despondency? Who has the most inspiring influence upon you? What is the cause? Do you tolerate negative or discouraging influences which you can avoid? Are you careless of your personal appearance? If so, when and why? Have you learned how to drown your troubles by being too busy to be annoyed by them? Would you call yourself a spineless weakling if you permitted others to do your thinking for you? Do you neglect internal bathing until auto-intoxication makes you ill-tempered and irritable? How many preventable disturbances annoy you, and why do you tolerate them? I am going to stop there because we've got 2 more pages of questions. Hello, Ha. Yeah, she came in and she left. Hi, Cindy. Good to see you. Yes, I kept it short on purpose. For one, yesterday's was pretty darn long. There was so much that we could have discussed. I misnumbered, if you will, misunderstood what I'd be reading. And I kept it short because of the questions, right? Got a lot of questions in there, and I want everybody to hear them. Yes, Brian, this is the how-to of developing your mindset, self-awareness. How willing are you to protect yourself against the negative influences? Okay, I'm going to be the first one to shout out, I am willing. How willing? I am willing to do whatever it takes. Honestly. Hello, Stephen. Good morning. And what does that mean? What is willingness to do whatever it takes? Similar in mindset, if you will, as burning the bridges. As you have joined me in the journey of reading this and discussing, and I have gone on my own bit of self-exploration and willingness to change for the better. My hope is you have done the same. As I've done this, I am seeing the changes that I had hoped would happen. I had been coming out of a time frame of survival mode. And there came a time when I realized that's no longer working for me. It's a real nice way to put it, right? Because you've heard me before talk about this. But I recognized that I had to go through it in order to get to the point for me to recognize that I want out. Okay, so I did that, and you all have joined me on the journey of trying to wrap my mind around a different way of thinking. Much of this is actually very familiar to me because years ago, a lot of what we've been discussing in some form, not fully, but in some form, has been a part of how I approached life and how I approach things. So it was familiar. And then there was other things, as everybody saw, that I just sat here and have to wrangle with in my mind. One of the things, and one of the exercises I've talked about before, is actually this one. The self-analysis test questions, I love how he actually has questions to be answered. I do an annual self-analysis. And it's based on where I am at the time. And I can tell you there's great benefit in doing this. And I'm already seeing in the first page of questions, right? Because there's 2.5 more pages there, that to take each question, to review it, and to answer it aloud, I can see how beneficial that is. I will be doing this. There's another self-assessment tool earlier in the book. So, protect yourself against negative influences. You have the willpower. You have the ability to change your thoughts so that you need not be affected by those negative influences. Hello, Matt.
Hello.
How are you?
Great. How are you?
Doing okay. Doing okay. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Cool. So I'm still reading the that Zen Habits book, and I'm on the chapter that talks about embracing impermanence and change. And when I read the part about in the beginning where he says, "Let us call this evil susceptibility to negative influences," in my book, it's talking a lot about how when things change, we tend to get really stressful and resistant toward change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that is our susceptibility to negative influences, because if something changes and that causes us to get really frustrated, and he talks about like everybody's a river and there's stuff in your life that's flowing, and you can't dam the river up and you can't freeze the river because life's constantly flowing.
Correct.
So plans that we make never turn out exactly the way we expect them. That's our mind movie. And I think that makes us susceptible to negative influences. So I was kind of tying that in with what Napoleon Hill was talking about, is if we're susceptible to change and everything that changes causes us to resist what's happening, we can't really find calmness in the middle of all the chaos that's happening. We can't take one thing at a time and do it well.
So there's the resistance, right? It's the resistance that's causing the damming and the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And yet, I don't think that we can have this incredible, no, I'm not going to go there because I was going to go completely off track. Sorry, Matt.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
But yeah, it's really, really, I love the questions because as soon as you read that and then you go right down to the questions, he sort of is pulling out your honesty, and he wants you to ask those and really be honest with yourself.
This is an honest assessment of who you are right now.
Yeah.
You know, the whole point is read it out loud and then answer in your own voice out loud. And during my annual self-analysis inventory, personal inside look, turn myself inside out sometimes, it's exactly what happens. It's not that I'm reading the questions aloud, but I'm stating aloud through a variety of exercises in a safe place. So I can hear myself say that which is in my head and what I'm seeing as real. And what's interesting is when you do that, sometimes you recognize, nah, that's not really true. That's not really true. And it's because it's stuck in your own head, getting swirlies up in the head, you know. But you're right, Matt, that you're either moving forward or moving backward, even if sometimes you think you're sitting still.
Yeah. And the part when he says most people don't realize they're cursed by it. So a lot of people don't know their own resistance and their own reactivity to things. Like my favorite is I don't know, like when people hear a really, really annoying noise and it repeats for a few times, and my favorite analogy is instead of being transparent to that and letting that noise happen and accepting it and being curious, like, wow, like that could be a really annoying noise to me, like pointing it out and accepting it and bringing light to it, people will immediately build up a brick wall and say, like, who's making that noise? That's got to stop. This is preventing me from working. Right. And I think part of that is they build resistance to something that's happening. and that's what causes them to stress, and it's being reactive to something, and that causes resistance and stress.
Well, that's the key. I think the key that you just said is reactive. Reactive, because yeah, and that's what Napoleon Hill's been trying to show us with the principles we've been discussing, is that it's all about me knowing who I am, where I am, the values that I hold, the thoughts that I control, so that when negative influences come across, when issues come in play, when things are presented to me, I'm approaching them always with the same mindset. And no longer am I reactive, but I can take a breath and I can look at things. This is how I see it. I can take a breath, take a step back, even if it's mental step back, and kind of look at it. Think for myself.
I remember what you said about he really stresses Leo Babbitt, who wrote the Zen Habits book. He really stresses the curiosity point of it, instead of being resistant toward it and cursing it and blaming it and not trusting it. He emphasizes, like, oh, well, that's interesting. What's that all about? Why does that happen? Like when you go to do something and something different happens, and you're like, huh, that's fascinating.
It takes away a lot of its power.
Yeah.
It really does. It takes away a lot of its power and puts the control back into ourselves. I'm recognizing that now. I just have a tendency always to ask questions. I want to know more before I'm supposed to really react to something. I got to know if it's worth the energy to react, to be honest with you, because I see, this is why I don't herd well. I see people getting all riled up over something, and I got to look and say, that's a lot of energy and a lot of time. And is it really worth it? No.
And that's why sometimes, it's not, because sometimes I think doing nothing can be a little bit better than doing something, because I know in situations where things happen, it's fun to be curious. But when you have people and you're being curious about people, it's a different story than being curious about situations and occurrences, because people are reactive. So when you get philosophical with people, which I tend to do, and I tend to ask questions and help them think deep, they really, really don't like that. So I tend to I just tend to sit quiet and listen to people, at work complain about what day it is, or how the day is going slower or fast, and how much work they have, and just drama.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I concur. Most often than not, I don't participate in those kind of conversations myself. But it's because I recognize that, I am who I am, and I'm moving on towards what I'm doing. Honestly, petty, it goes through my head, and I say, just how petty is it? Now, here's an interesting point, though. When I am not on point, when I am not in control of my own thoughts, when I'm in that survival mode, truly I'm much more susceptible to those reactive type situations, which is why I'm so glad I'm recognizing I'm getting out of that survival mode. I got to tell you, it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy on both sides. I'd rather have it on the side of where I'm going rather than where I was. But there was this transition time, and you heard me talking about that battle in my head, replacing all that negative. Well, it was easy for the negative to come in because I had gotten down to I'm just going to call it survival mode. Tighten everything up. I got to just put the head to the grindstone, nose down. We're going to do this. We're going to get through it. We're going to do whatever it takes. What am I willing to do? I don't care. We got to get through this, because we don't like the alternative.
Yeah.
And you stay in that, and we stayed in that for quite a while. But my husband is still in it. So my hope is that as I come out, he'll follow me. It's usually the way it happens. So I am coming out, and I'm recognizing all of that and putting these things into place, and recognizing now that when you are that despondent, that down, that just do what's in front of me, I can't think ahead. I can't believe, and it's all about I can't, I won't, I'm not, it's not possible for me, that sort of thing. That was the first step of changing it, was changing those words to say, I want to know more. And that's why I was approaching this. So I was already moving out, but this has really helped me to move even further. So I'm glad to be able to say I recognize it. But yeah, when, people get reactive, I don't follow well, but I'm more susceptible to having those thoughts penetrate.
Yeah, and that's why we shouldn't. Yeah, that's why we shouldn't be around those people that that are discouraging and negative all the time. I'm gonna let somebody else hop back in. So
Okay, dear. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Always good.
Yes, always. Good morning, Anne and Tony. Glad to have you with us. Anybody want to jump in? Jump in with a few thoughts about self-analysis, about we have control over our thoughts, right? How to protect ourselves against negative influences. He's saying it's willpower. He's saying that we need to recognize that those negative influences will work on us and can be difficult to detect. So it's time to clean it out. Clean them out, recognize them for what they are, and replace them with something else, which is my own thoughts and my own moving forward and my own focus. I don't know. I'd like somebody to jump in and talk with me about it. Tell me what you think. If you disagree or don't get it, that's cool too. Where'd Brian go? Brian always has something good. Darn you. I may have to call you back here. Susceptibility to negative influences. I'm just going to go back to understanding that all of this is a state of mind, that we have to identify that which is getting in our way, which is why I do the annual review. And it's a personal review, what's getting in the way. The other thing that's striking me right now is that the experiences over the past few years of being in survival mode was recognizing that I was in survival mode, but not having something to replace and not being ready. Not really being ready to replace that negative. Today I'm ready, and I have been for quite a while. So yeah, if anybody wants to jump in and talk with me, we got Anne and Tony. There you are, Anne. I was hoping you'd jump in.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good.
Oh no, she's in and she's out. Come back, Anne, come back. Hi, Carlton. Welcome. Not quite sure what happened to Anne there. Yes, good morning, Carlton. Discussing negative influences. Negative influences, how to protect yourself against them, understanding that you do have that power to do so. No, thoughts, people, places, things, that which is contrary to your moving forward on your path of success and towards your major definite purpose. So self-analysis, self-awareness, I think, therefore I am. Wouldn't it be great if it were that easy? Well, Anne, I guess, is gone for a while. Awful quiet today. What's up with that? It's only Tuesday. Usually you get really quiet near the end of the week. My goodness.
Hey, good morning, Charlene.
Good morning, Carlton.
I didn't want
you to see you.
Thank you. Didn't want you to have to talk to yourself for too long there.
I appreciate that. I do. So, what's up?
And not much. I just woke up, just got my morning coffee brewed here, and not a whole lot. Today's our day to go deliver blankets that my wife makes around town, so that takes up our morning usually. A little Indian food for lunch, and then probably get stuck on Blab because I'm not in the mood to do any work today.
Okay. So you're not focused now. So here's an excellent question for you.
Okay,
Yes, you did pick the hot seat, didn't you?
I did. Go right ahead.
So according to Napoleon Hill, if we are not deploying our willpower, if we are not controlling our thoughts, we are susceptible to the negative influences. In this case, it would be blab. So when you're moving forward on blab, does it align with what you have as your vision of who you want to be and what you're doing? Number one. And number two, are you going on to blab with a purpose to prevent those negative influences?
If I can hold those two questions in my head, yes and no.
Okay.
I from more of a philosophical standpoint, I disagree with the author that you quoted that we need to control our thoughts. We have no capability to control our thoughts. Our thoughts occur, but we have no control over what thoughts get generated. In terms of purpose, I think it's okay to have purpose that is vague at times. In other words, if I come on Blab, depends, but sometimes I come on Blab simply to relax. So I don't have a specific goal in mind in terms of who I want to talk to or what I want to talk about or how long I want to stay. Play it by ear, so to speak. For focus, interestingly for me, I could be the poster child for attention deficit disorder my whole life, and so I mean, there's a plus side to that. Well, okay, I'm gonna tell a short story, but there's a plus side. But maybe this will make it better. When I first got married, I was in love with who's now my wife, I should say. But I was in love with this woman who was from South America, she was from Colombia, and my Spanish was horrible. It was, high school Spanish at best. And I talked to an acquaintance of mine who had also married somebody from Colombia, and I asked him. I said, doesn't it harm communication, obviously, because we're going to have a language barrier there. And he surprised me with this answer. He said, no, he says, actually, it'll help your communication. And I was like, how? Because all I could envision was Ricky and Lucy yelling at each other. And he said, it helps your communication. He says, because when we speak the same language, we tend not to listen to the other person. He says, but if there's a language barrier, it forces you to stop thinking about what you want to say next and instead to concentrate on what the other person is saying. He said, it's slower, but it actually helps. And so I think and the reason for that little anecdote there is with focus, it's like while I have a problem with focus, because I have a problem with it, I am keenly aware of when it rears its ugly head. So I'm more sensitive sort of to the notion of when I'm focusing and when not. Sorry for the long. I tend to soapbox a little bit, so you have to excuse me for that. Hi, Ann.
Hi, good morning.
Ann. Welcome, dear. So I do have a question, Carlton. So you saw the title of the blab, Think and Grow Rich, talking about beginning self-analysis according to Napoleon Hill. Yeah. Yeah. Why'd you drop in?
Of the blabs that were out there, this one seemed the most likely to be interesting.
Fair enough. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Glad you're here. Hi, Ann. What do you think?
Good morning. Again, a lot of retraining the brain and our perception, and it almost is these neural pathways that operate almost at a rate that's faster than the speed of light.
Okay.
If we want to get to, that's a visualization I have in my mind as far
That's
as
the way I took it. That's interesting.
New neural pathways in the mind and really recreating and reshaping a lot of past experiences and thoughts and how that's affecting us in, I guess, making choices in where we want to go. So recently, John Assarath of myneurogen.com, and he does...
I'm familiar with them.
Yep, he just had something called a Brainathon.
Yep, familiar with that as well.
Yep, and this is not me, but what kind of what I took away from it the most was these questions that we don't tend to ask ourselves, like, what do I love? And how, like a simple question, and how to integrate that into our everyday conscious choices.
Yes.
Different ways to help us feel better. And certainly our relationship with finances certainly contributes to the potential of our overall health and wealth and well-being. So I just want to quickly read just 2 notes that I have from it. And he based it on something called inner size. And a lot of it had to do with really reprogramming the brain, the untamed thoughts that tend to have a major hold on us.
Right.
And part of it's called inner size. And what the first step is to recognize and release. So the awareness part that comes into it. And then to re-script and reshape. So once we're aware, we can replace with a thought that feels better. Because I do feel like a lot of our thoughts really come from a place of our feelings, our emotions. They really coincide with one another. And the last is to reset and recalibrate. And there's a lot of power in it. And the shifts can feel subtle, but they're extremely profound.
They are. It's just a different way of saying what Napoleon Hill's been saying throughout what we've been reading. So you say it's a simple question, right? Who do you love? But if you say it aloud and then ask yourself why, it becomes a question that reveals, and you're honest, it becomes a question that reveals something about yourself, good or bad or indifferent. I don't think there is a label to it. It's a recognition of who I am, and where I am right now. And then in this self-awareness, self-analysis portion comes the ultimate question of, is this really where I want to be? And if not, now at least I know that I am here. This is the way I'm thinking and responding. So it's time to change it. Now it goes to what you were saying, Anne, is recognizing it. You can't just get rid of a thought or a habit or a pattern. You can't just throw it away. It has to be replaced with something. So that's where I come in with and fully understanding now the part Napoleon Hill says about having that vision for what I want to be. And then breaking it down. Well, how am I going to get there? Part of it is that most of it is that change of the way I respond to the world and replacing those habits of thought that I already have, replace those through practice with something else that's more in line with the vision I have for who I want to be, what I want to be, and what I want to do with it.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of us struggle with feeling overwhelmed as to what first step to really take in making this shift into a new paradigm of being.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming when you do. So for instance, like when I was coming out, when I was first recognizing that I was in survival mode and I was tired of that and it needed to change, right? If I looked at myself in my entirety and said, I need to change to be out of survival mode into thrive mode, and I recognize it takes a lot of work, I would be completely overwhelmed and may have just crawled up in the middle of the bed in a fetal position and said, screw it. That's way too much, right? But I'm old enough now to recognize, and the experiences I've had, I can now recognize that change happens for me one at a time, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. It's sometimes immediate. It is a process that requires a lot of concerted effort and focused effort to change the way I think about something, to change the way that I'm going to respond to something, to make those decisions ahead of time of how I'm going to be, and to practice that self-discipline and everything Napoleon Hill talks about. I couldn't articulate it quite as well or as strangely in some cases as he does, but so knowing that right? This is why I really like the self-analysis test questions. He does exactly what you threw out there, which was, as you said, who or what do I love? And then add the why. And he's asking questions, just the one page. There's 3.5 pages of them. We'll get to 2.5 pages tomorrow. But they're questions that I think should be said aloud. And I will be doing these test questions during my self-analysis this time instead of the others, because I committed when I first started this book and this blab. I committed to doing it the way Napoleon Hill says. Do you suffer? Are you sarcastic and offensive in your conversation? I mean, you say that out loud and you think about it. And honestly, when I was in survival mode, for sure, I was known for my sarcasm, and I reveled in being known for being sarcastic, which is awful. It's really awful.
Why
it's not what I want to be.
Why? Okay. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Carlton. Jump in.
I was going to ask you why it was awful, but then I think you answered it before I got the question out. So.
Oh, okay. Well, for me, it's awful because it's mean. Sarcasm is mean, and I held it over. I was almost like lauding it over somebody rather than
as a weapon, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Or as a mechanism of, I'm feeling really insecure and I hate the way I feel right now, so I'm going to show you just how smart I am.
There you go.
Singer, and that's not good. That's not me. That's not growth. That's not where I want to be. So it's recognizing that, and it's saying, no, I don't want to be like that. Well, all right. So what am I going to be instead?
I'm curious about something, if I could ask, if you
Sure.
don't mind. I was not familiar with Napoleon Hill at all when I came into the room. So while you've been talking, I've sort of been, reading a couple wiki articles here and trying to catch up. I'm curious about one thing here, and again, this is Wikipedia, so for better or for worse, right?
All right.
It says, if I can, just a short paragraph. It says, Napoleon Hill openly described his experienced spirits that visited him in chapter 12 of his book, Grow Rich with Peace of Mind, in 1967. He referred to them as unseen friends, watchers, strange beings, and the great school of masters that had been watching him and maintained a school of wisdom. He states that the master spoke to him audibly and revealed secrets and knowledge to him. He further relates that the masters can disembody themselves and travel instantly to any place they choose in order to acquire essential knowledge or to give knowledge directly by voice to anyone else, close quote. And he said, Grow Rich with Peace of Mind was heavily influenced by Hill's spiritual experiences. He refers to the master by saying much of what he said already had been presented to you in the chapters of this book or will follow in other chapters. Okay. What do you make of that?
I make that it is a bad summation of his study of over 500 successful people who all talked about having access in their mind of those people they admired and trusted and would rely upon in order to get through things or make decisions. It's a bad summation, quite honestly, because we've read Think and Grow Rich. I've read The Law of Success. I've read a few others of his. And he actually goes into some detail here in Think and Grow Rich about explaining what that means. And really what it is who do I want to be like? Why do I want to be like them? Be they like Benjamin Franklin or Anne Brum, right? I get to know Anne and I decide there are characteristics and qualities that I really like and admire, and I would like to have that myself. Well, how do I do that? I get to know her, and I call on her mentally when I'm in a situation, and it's the what would Anne do kind of situation.
I guess, yeah. So if I can see if I'm gathering here what you're saying correctly. So you're saying that the paragraph, for example, in the wiki there is interpreting what he's saying in a strictly literal manner, where what you're saying was this was more of a metaphor for modeling your life after somebody else that you admire?
Well, I said it very simplistically.
Okay.
It is what he was talking about is in between my simplistic view and that which Wikipedia is saying, which is, I mean, it's a summation. I just think it's badly written because it implies that he sat alone by himself and called upon spirits to visit him to
Yeah, to give them information or whatever.
Yeah, and he did in a sense, but when you read it in context, it actually makes sense.
Okay.
So
All
it's more than just that paragraph. I would not let that paragraph deter you from exploring a little bit further.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I almost feel like he's bringing this kind of supernatural, unexplained forces that we experience here on planet Earth, spinning in the galaxy. He really brings it down to kind of a applicable.
Well, he does, though. He does go into the ether, as we all know. The principle of the mastermind shows us. I've experienced it. I've experienced where I've been with somebody that I can finish your sentences. You know, there's a connection right away. That we are more than just a physical being. We are emotional, mental, spiritual. We are limited by our language to be able to explain, and by current science to be able to prove or measure. So anecdotally, there are plenty of experiences to share. But honestly, Carlton, here we're not stuck on just one specific thing. We're all kind of exploring to see, where does this fit with who I am right now and where I want to be tomorrow and next week, and my February plan. I've got a plan for February, and then I've got a plan for 2016, and then I got a plan for 2017 for my business and myself. So
yep. No, I wasn't. The intent wasn't to be critical. I was just curious to get a little more feedback from you.
I love that. Love that. No, it wasn't taken as critical.
In
a negative sense.
Given the term and the plan for many years, and although plans and goal setting really has its place for me, there also has to be room for and flexibility for the unknown, the supernatural. You know,
it's interesting because this is the way if I may interject,
please,
is that I have goals and plans, but I understand that I must be flexible because there are other people involved. Well, so I have to be able to adjust and to pivot as needed. But that doesn't mean that I pivot away from my core values or that I pivot away from doing it, or I pivot to doing something that isn't in line with where I want to go.
Right.
So if I have hiccups and speed bumps and flood walls and big concrete walls, and I have all of that, right? And what I've recognized in the way Napoleon Hill's putting it, but I always knew that if you get through it, over it, under it, and you have the tools to do that, sometimes it just takes a bigger shovel, right? Sometimes it takes a softer voice. But if you have the tool to get over, under, or around it, as long as you're still going back to the ultimate, this is where I want to be. Whereas what happens is when I don't have that, even though I had goals, they didn't make much sense. I didn't have any meaning. Woohoo. I did that. Now what? And I can look back on, woohoo, I did that. Now what? Now what? Well, all right, good. Wow. Yeah, You know, nothing exciting. There's no passion there. There's no purpose. There's no oomph about there. So what I like is that I'm feeling much more solid on where I want to be in conjunction with where I want my business to be. Much more solid than when I even started my business in 2008. And while I had this level of who did I want to be many, many years ago, I didn't have it quite as clear as I do now. So any goal that I set now is always with in mind of where I want to end up. So it might be a little one, it might be a little milestone, it might be a 90-day, a 1 week, a 1 year, but I have everything outlined of where I want to be and what it looks like, and that's what I'm going towards.
Yeah, and celebrating the little successes along the way.
Oh, yeah, that's I don't know that that's a requirement, but it sure helps me.
Yeah. And then, you know, that gets down to the basics you were saying, you know, to really know yourself, like really understand.
And that's where we are now, yeah.
Who we are and why we do what we do. And I don't really, for me, after a decade plus of being in service-based businesses, haven't started a service-based business, haven't volunteered at end of life and in hospitals, utilizing a spiritual-based practice. I mean, you really do learn a great deal about yourself and what motivates you. And for me, it really shifted from here and coming from a place of here and a knowing. It doesn't even go through here. It absolutely comes from a knowing and a trust.
Oh, I get the knowing. Yes.
Yeah, and it's undoubtedly, obviously subjective and very individualized.
It's very personal.
Extremely personable. So I can't say, I'm in no position to say, like, for you, what you're really connecting with, what brings meaning and passion to you. But for me, it brings great clarity and confidence in the choices that I make, and that they continue to get better and better because I feel better about it. It's not because I'm thinking about it. It's because it's almost of an inspired action. It's a feeling. And just to experiment with it, just to try, just for today, and experiment with going with what feels better, tapping into that inner guidance system. And I really feel like Napoleon Hill, in many ways, is connecting with, asking us.
That's it. That's what he's asking us to do.
The self-discovery.
Get to the point where we can trust our hunches. We get inspired. We trust our inspirations. We look for it. We seek it. We go beyond just being automatons and reacting to everything out in the world, and instead become self-aware and thinkers.
Yes,
and
almost
thinkers and doers. Sorry, but understanding that we're human beings as well. That we're beings, not human doings. We're human beings. You know. So all of that is wrapped in. That's why I love what he's been writing. But also understanding that this is all based on his interviews and watchings, if you will, and careful observation of over 500 successful people. What do they have in common? And this is one of them, that self-analysis. And what I really like is the questions that he poses to ask ourselves. See, a lot of these I haven't asked myself, which is why I'm willing to do that this year. I'm going to do that this year. Use these questions instead of the others. Because again, I'm wanting to do things differently so I have a different outcome.
Yeah, and it's so powerful. There are, like, for example, with shifting my mindset or my behavior and getting different results, I say 2014 was the year of shifting complaining and blaming. And literally, my husband and I had this practice where we would, like, give each other a gentle poke. Like, it had to be almost something, it had to be something physical for me to shift from complaining and blaming. And I mean, just give it a shot. Have someone, a partner, a friend, give them try. Just someone that, if you're noticing the complaining and blaming, it's easy with a physical component to shift out of that very rapidly. And it's helped me out a lot into even learning more about me and what makes me tick. So
again, it's self-awareness and being willing to explore it, right?
Definitely. Aren't we, I say, like, we're the Bill Nye the Science Guy of our own experience.
I liked it when you said that the other day. That was good.
Yeah, let's have some fun here. Like, and like I said, my experience at end of life with hospice patients and their family members and their caregivers, I mean, they're not really talking about all this at the end of their life. They're really, what brings them great peace and joy during this transition in their life. A lot of it pertains to the fun that they had, the love that they shared, the memories that they made. It's not about, I wish
I'd spent more time on my business.
No, they're like, it's all about doing more of what you love to do. So I'm totally really feeling that tremendously. So I just want to thank you. I'll let somebody else come in, but I really value this. And a quick thing, if anyone in the Boston area, they're having a Women Entrepreneurship Day that's hosted at Harvard University next Thursday, I believe the 19th. And it's a woman who wrote, her name is Rita, her first name is Rita, and she wrote Think and Grow Rich for Women.
Yes.
Elvin, I believe.
I'm going to end up reading that simply because it's understandable that Napoleon Hill's focus is on the men and why his focus is what it is. The Times and that entire chapter that was related to basically it was assuring the fellas that, listen, when you get to 35 or 40, you're going to be able to harness that energy and do something with it. There's always a chance you can do it earlier, but you'll be able to do it. And I struggled with that. And I thank all of the fellas and the gentlemen that were in here during that time, because it was a struggle for me to relate it to myself, because and we all agree that is where we're profoundly different levels of energy, different viewpoints, how we focus that energy and how we harness it. So yes, I'd heard about her viewpoint from it and was going to pick that up. And I am nowhere near Boston. I'm a good 14 hours away. Though I am up for a road trip next week is a little soon for me to adjust my schedule for that.
Well, I just thought I'd share, and I will be attending, and I'm so looking forward to being with brilliant, exceptional ladies, yes. Lady leader.
Now, I'll tell you though, and I'm gonna, everybody who has been with me for a while, and that's just a handful of you. Thank you for staying. I want to welcome Aaron. It's good to see you here. Rick, thank you for coming. It's good to see you. Darren, good to have you here. I am an advocate of masterminds. I moderate them and facilitate them myself as masterminds for solopreneurs. And I am excited, very excited, that I was invited by private invitation into a mastermind of 6 women, powerful women. And we're going to begin meeting twice a month shortly. And that is simply going to add to this growth that I've already been on. Now, why am I saying that? 2 reasons. One is, Anne brought up that the woman's point of view when it comes to what Napoleon Hill has found to be common with all successful people. And the second thing is that on my own personal journey here of getting out of surviving into just being better and being more than what I was when I first started here, but wanting different, and therefore going through these exercises, and those who have joined me on this, that's one of them. Had I been approached with that same invitation this time last year, I would have politely declined. I can tell you that's how far I've come in the past year with my own mental viewpoint, my own goal setting, because, I'm shifting the way the business is going. I'm shifting the way I'm handling things and what have you. And I know I needed to be more and what have you. So the journey that I've been on, of which many of you have been a part of, thank you, set me up where I got that invitation. And I just simply said, I would love to. Thank you. And it was later I realized, wow, had I gotten that this time last year, I would have declined because I wouldn't have had the vision of what I want. I wouldn't have felt that confidence in who I am. I wouldn't have who I am today. I was very different last year. So and I attribute that primarily to the willingness to be different and to change. That's what and seeking. What is it that I'm going to need to do, and then doing? So you all have been a part of that. Yes, you too, Carlton, for your first day here. Thank you for that. But yay! Definitely, definitely Ron and Cindy have been there, and then Anne lately. And of course, moving forward, I can only get better based on my own experience. Tells me how awesome things have been to this point. So it's just an encouragement to anybody who's wondering, does this crap really work? Well, it's not crap, and it does work. And I think that when we are left to think for ourselves, we can see those gaps which is the self-analysis, right? What am I missing? I knew that what I was doing wasn't working to get me where I wanted to be. And I did some exploration and some my own self-analysis as to who I am, how I work, and said, well, then this is the route I'm going to take. It works for too many people for me to deny. The history is there. And again, the other, just so you all know, you guys are studying Think and Grow Rich with me, and my early morning readings are Law of Success and a couple of other books. So I'm getting there. Thank you.
Congratulations. It shows. So it shows on you.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thank you for doing this and holding the space. And as the saying goes, what you're seeking is seeking you. So let's seek consciously and thoughtfully and deliberately create what feels right to us. And I like, again, I didn't say I think, it's about feeling our way to what feels right to us in that time, space, moment, present, however you want to term it. Getting more into our practice of it has incredible power to make magic happen.
Yes, it does. It does. All right. So I'm going to ask everybody to sit still while I close out the recording, and then I can leave the room open for a half hour, 40 minutes. Anybody wants to, join in the discussion, if you will. Say bye, Aaron. He's got to take off to go do his workout. So thank you for those who've joined me in the live stream. That's Matt and Carlton and Ann. Greatly appreciated. Thank you, everybody, in the comment section for adding to the discussion today. For those watching the replay, thank you for hanging out with us to this point. This is Charlene Burke with Grow Because You Know. That's www.growbecauseyouknow.com. Let's move forward with the day on purpose, with purpose, to grow our hearts, grow our minds, and grow our businesses.